Welcome back to episode 18 of the Dear Young Men podcast. In today's episode, we're going to define what masculinity actually is, how taking cold showers can change your life, and what space travel can teach us about ourselves on Dear Young Men. So this last week, it was the Democratic National Convention, and if you are not an American, it's basically one half of the country. The people that they vote for, they have their convention. The Republican National Convention was a few weeks ago. And I saw this clip talking about masculinity and how one of the members of, this is not a political show, I'm not really talking politics, I'm just talking about what they believe is a version of masculinity. And I want to talk about that. And so one of the members, the person running for the president, is a woman named Kamala Harris, and her husband, Doug Emhoff. This is who they're talking about, and I'm going to play a clip here.
But they are doing so in trying to put forward male figures, Tim Walz being one of them, Doug Emhoff last night, who can speak to men out there who might not be the sort of testosterone-laden, gun-toting kind of guy who wants to listen to Hulk Hogan and the kind of players that came out at the RNC.
So she's talking about the RNC, which is the Republican National Convention, and basically what happened there was like a really over-the-top display of masculinity, like the 80s action movies with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and basically it's just this puffed-up guy on steroids, the version of masculinity that people think about when they think, oh, masculinity, this is what men are, this is what masculinity actually is. It's being strong, it's having sex with every woman that even looks at you, it's being powerful, it's having a million kids, it's not being married, it's having nice cars. And that's sort of what she's referring to. But she's going more the opposite end of the spectrum, a more, I would say, more effeminate version of masculinity.
Or might want to listen to that, but also, in addition, understand that it's okay in 2024 to be a man comfortable in his own skin.
What we saw at the Trump convention, which was, as you know, somebody, I forget exactly who said it, testosterone with Kid Rock and the Ultimate Fighting Champion guy.
Yeah, that guy.
And Hulk Hogan.
Dana White.
Yeah.
So they're talking about a more effeminate version of masculinity. Let's just call it what it is. It's more in touch with your feelings. It's that type of thing. His speech, he had a video, his son videos in front of his speech. It was actually really, really quite moving. It was really awesome. It was really good. The unfortunate part of it is that Doug Emhoff cheated on his wife with a nanny and got her pregnant. I don't know if they ended up aborting the kid or actually what happened to the kid. I don't think anybody actually knows what happened. But that is the version of masculinity that the media and the more mainstream sort of wants you to be, is this more feminized man that takes advantage of women, sleeping with the nanny, treating his wife poorly by cheating on her, and then obviously having a kid out of wedlock. Just evil things. Those are just evil things. But then we can contrast that on the other side of the aisle with Trump, who also cheated on his wife, who was definitely more traditionally masculine. I mean, he embodies much more of what masculinity in a more modern sense has become. There are like the two versions now. There's the Hulk Hogan, there's the Sylvester Stallone, there's those types of the puffed up guys who aren't really masculine. They're basically they're like kind of every trait of masculinity turned up to 1,000, but then all the other parts that make masculinity really good turned it down to 0. And so he's kind of that. I mean, he's a womanizer. He's had a million different wives. He slept with a million different women. He is definitely more traditionally masculine, though. When he was shot, he stands up sort of defiantly in face of that fear, which is definitely a more consistently masculine trait. But he's not exactly a clear version of masculinity. He's definitely closer than what I think Doug Emhoff sort of puts into the culture. But it's not like his version of masculinity isn't the true version of masculinity, which is what we're searching after. Like, what's the truth? What's the truth of masculinity? What should we as men be striving for as men? I'm a man, and this is called the Dear Young Men podcast, so that's obviously who I'm talking about. So any ladies out there, turn your ears off. Okay, so then there are other versions of masculinity within the culture, You see a Andrew Tate. He's loud, he's in your face, he's aggressive. He's sort of all the things that men cling to. There's a reason he's so popular. He's popular because he speaks to the part of men that have been told basically their entire lives that the way that they look at the world is wrong. They shouldn't want to be powerful. They shouldn't want to go and achieve great things and lift heavy objects. And he's sort of a spit in the face of that culture. He's also not a good version of masculinity either. He has also, he's a pimp. He has slept with a million different women. He's out of wedlock. He's got kids with everybody. So he is, again, he's sort of more the Trump character where he sort of embodies a lot of those traditionally masculine traits, but he turns them up to 157,000%, and he turns down the ones that are also really important to being a man. And we don't see that in a Trump or a Tate. Whereas we see the more, I would say, I guess you could consider them more feminine. They're not really feminine, but the traits that Tate turns down, I would say a Doug Emhoff turns up. So there's just not a good mix of love and also aggressiveness. And so, of course, there's actually a true version of masculinity in the world. I know, it's going to surprise you. So this version of masculinity is made up of a few different parts. One of them is sacrifice. One of them is courage. Another important part of it is love. Another part of it is tactfully aggressive when needed. And finally, being firm, resolute, and bold. And obviously, there's only one man who's really exhibited all these things in the world. And he unfortunately was killed for being a more perfect version of us, and his name is Jesus Christ. So Jesus's version of masculinity is the true version of what men should be striving for. He lives a perfect life so that way we can try to emulate that life and everything that he did. I know I'll never come close to it, but I know it's my job to do the best I can to be as close to what he and the type of man that he was. So the first thing we'll go over is sacrifice. This is taken from Luke 14:26 through 27. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brother and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. When I read this the first time, I obviously, you see that and you go, hate my wife, hate my kids, hate my own life. Like, how can I can't be his disciple. Basically, what he's saying there is he's saying that's the extreme you need to take this to. You need to be willing to hate your own life to be my disciple, because you have to be willing to carry a cross. And if you want to be a follower of me, you have to be willing to take the hate of the world. He says it, I think it's in John. He says, if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. So he is obviously the ultimate form of sacrifice, as he is then crucified on the cross for our sins and for our transgressions, so that we may enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that's the ultimate version of sacrifice that anybody has ever explained. I mean, if you want to, the definition of sacrifice should basically just be Jesus' sacrifice, dying for our sins on the cross. Next, courage. Jesus stands defiant in the face of Satan after fasting in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. In Matthew 4:1 through 11, this is a little bit long, so bear with me. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. I just want to note, this is 2 lines. This is 2 verses. If this was like modern times, it's like a YouTube video, this would be like a 50-part episode. Okay, I probably should be making jokes about it, but it's just kind of funny to me. And continuing, and the tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. But he answered, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to this holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, again, it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to the very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and all their glory, and said to him, all these I will give you, if you fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. So obviously, we're talking about courage. Jesus defiantly stands up in the face of Satan. He's given everything. Any one of us would have accepted Satan's deal. We all would have. I mean, we are all flawed. And anybody who doesn't think that they would have accepted his deal, at least at 2, guaranteed at 3, if you could rule over the entire world, all the kingdoms of the land. If you don't believe that, then you don't know yourself enough. You don't understand the true depths of your own depravity. He is defiant in the face of Satan, and that's what shows the ultimate courage. He has the ability to take anything and have everything, yet he's willing to say, "Be gone from me. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and only him shall you serve." Next, we're going to talk about how love. Jesus' ministry is love. There are a few examples of this. After Lazarus dies, the shortest verse in the Bible, it's written, "And Jesus wept." That is, to me, that specific verse has always hit me like a ton of bricks. His ministry is love. Jesus loves you. And I think that in the culture it's been misconstrued, because you'll see a lot of people who don't understand that that's not convincing to people, that Jesus loves you, and saying, "Oh, Jesus loves you," like Jesus loves you. Jesus, his love for you isn't what we view as love. The version that we view as love is a pretty non-deep version of love. It's very surface level. It's just like skin deep. That's kind of the love that we talk about. Whereas Jesus, his love is the depth of his love for us. It pretty much, it knows no bounds, the depth of his love for us. Yet we obviously treat him with disdain. Even if you love Jesus, you'll never love him the way that he loves you. His sacrificial love, dying on the cross, is what all fathers are called to emulate in the world for their children. And it's a perfect example of sacrifice. Working in silence, not expecting a thank you, bearing the weight of the family burden as to not indicate anything is wrong. That is a love Jesus has taught us through his actions. So Jesus obviously dies on the cross. That's like the culmination of everything in the New Testament, all the first 4 books, basically. And it's obviously one of the most important signs of love that Jesus shows us. There are a ton of other examples. There's the one where the prostitute goes to him, and the Pharisees are telling him, "You're going to teach to her, preach to her, blah 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 blah." And he says, "Let he who has not sinned cast the first stone." And they obviously, nobody does it. And he says, "Nobody's here." And she says, "No, they all left." And I'm kind of butchering that, but basically that he shows his love for us as humans time and time and time again. It's also written that he was not sent to condemn the world, but to save the world. Jesus' ministry is love. Everything he does and everything he does on the planet is love. He loves you, and that's what he does. And that's what's missing from a lot of the more prototypical masculine men that we view, like the Hulk Hogans, the Trumps, the Andrew Tates, those types of men. They don't have that deep love and that working in silence, the not expecting a thank you, just bearing the load of your family, because they're selfish, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying, and it's okay, Doug Hemhoff, he's fine too. Like, I'm not here to judge these people. There's a power much greater than myself that can judge them, and I'm gonna leave it up to that guy, to the big guy. I'm gonna say that I personally am not sitting here saying I could judge. What I can say is that the way that they are living is not a truthful way, and it's not the way that we should be living, because there is obviously a perfect example that we can follow throughout the Bible. Next, tactfully aggressive when needed. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen, sheep, and pigeons, and their money changers sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. Do not make my father's house a house of trade." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." I believe that's from Psalm 69 at the end there. But the more important thing is tactfully aggressive. Jesus, there's a version of him in the culture that's like a Buddhist monk. That's not how he was. He's fashioning, you see it here, and making a whip of cords. He drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen, and he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. In just one verse, you could see that he is aggressive when he needs to be. He's a guy. He's a man. He was mad at them, basically. And this would be righteous anger. And so he flips over the tables, and he pours out the coins, and he fashions a whip out of cords. And he shows us that sometimes you do need to be aggressive, and that it's okay to act like this. And then finally, he is firm, resolute, and bold. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And keep in mind, he's walking ahead of them when he says this. They are all behind him. He's leading. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was happening to him. saying, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days, he will rise." Jesus, he's leading this group to his death. He tells them what's going to happen. He says, I'm going to be delivered over to the Gentiles. They will mock me, spit on me, and flog me, which is whipping. And then they will kill him. They will put him on the cross and he will die. But then after 3 days, he will rise. The thing is that I think that when I was younger, I never felt the pain. I don't think I ever really truly understand the pain that Jesus must have felt on the cross, because to me, he's so much greater than I that it's hard to realize that he wasn't actually a human. And it's good to remember that he was actually a man. He was the Son of Man. He was here. He was a human. He was born of the Virgin Mary. So the pain he felt, we also, if that same thing happened to us, we would have felt the same excruciating pain that he also felt. So just good to understand that he exemplifies courage, and his boldness and his resoluteness in saying, this is what's going to happen to me, but I'm willing to take it for all people. Again, his sacrifice, calling to sacrifice. And that's just what you don't see in a Doug Emhoff. He cheats on his wife. He's unwilling to sacrifice. Obviously, he gets a nanny pregnant. I don't think people know what happened to the kid, so he's unwilling to raise the kid that he birthed. That's his kid. And then he divorces his wife, and he just blows up his whole family's world. I mean, my parents are divorced, and I hate it. I mean, I'll just be honest. If they're listening, I mean, I don't like it. It's the worst thing ever. Never get divorced. It's very selfish to get divorced, is my opinion. Obviously, everyone's going to say, well, what about this? What about that? I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the 95% of people who we fell out of love. Sorry. It's selfish to get divorced. Trump, same thing. He's had, how many wives has he had? He did not have that kernel of sacrifice. And same thing with Andrew Tate and the more like those types of people. They don't have that love, that sacrifice that Jesus shows us. Obviously, Jesus, Trump, Tate, and even Emhoff, they sort of emulate Jesus in certain ways, but Jesus is more than just he's just more than when he flipped over the tables. He also dies on the cross, and he also does so many other things that a Trump and a Tate and a Doug Emhoff, they don't emulate. And that's fine, but we are all called to come closer to Jesus's version of masculinity and emulate him. And that's the version that we should be looking for. Obviously, this is the way that I have read the scriptures. You should read them for yourself, so that way you can understand them. But I hope this, as you begin to live, remember this. Remember that Jesus, what his ministry is, what he does on earth for us. Sacrifice, courage, loving. He's tactfully aggressive. He's firm, resolute, and bold. And he's defiant in the face of death. He's defiant. And he's so defiant that he is raised from the dead after 3 days, because Jesus is risen. All right, next we're going to talk about how Americans are outspending their income, and it is at an increasing rate. So this is from this article from the Daily Hodl, which obviously this is a little bit skewed because they're gonna go all anti fungible money, or well, not fungible, all anti cash and this money that you can just create at will, basically. The title is U.S. credit card debt soars to $1,140 billion as Bank of America CEOs issue warning on depleting American consumer. Americans are holding more household debt than ever before, as one of the biggest banks in the country warns of a weakening U.S. consumer. According to a report from the New York Fed, U.S. credit card debt just hit a record $1.14 trillion high. On the whole, Americans have more student loans, mortgage, credit card, and home equity revolving debt right now than at any other time in history. This is, to me, credit card debt. So many of these things are just unforced errors. And it's so frustrating because their willingness and their unwillingness to sacrifice on the things in their daily life to get out of debt is staggering to me. People are unwilling to give up the things that they really like to give themselves a better future. And I think it's most people are unwilling to see, they can't see past this current moment. The way they look at the world, they see the world as, well, everything is this one way right now, and it's never going to change, so I might as well enjoy it. But it's not true. You actually can pay off your debt. You can pay off your student loans. You can pay off your credit card debt. You can pay off your home. It takes a while, but you can actually get rid of your car debt too. You can actually get rid of debt. Debt is just numbers. It's just a number game. So let's say you have $10,000 of debt. each month you're sort of paying off like $500 of it. But if you were to really tighten your budget, you could pay off another $500. So currently you're looking at it right now, and with interest, it's going to take you 20, 30, maybe 40 months to pay it all off. But if you were just to grind a little bit and sacrifice a little bit, sell a few things, you could get it paid off in less than a year, 10 months, 8 months, whatever it may be. And that's sort of it's just math. It's a very simple math game. And the problem is that people are emotional. And so they can't see what I'm saying and say, well, yeah, but I have to live a life. I have to do these things. No, you don't. Actually, it's pretty remarkable. You don't have to do these things. And as somebody who doesn't do those things, or who hadn't done those things for a while to get to a place financially where he's comfortable and where he's doing quite well for himself. Obviously, I wish you always wish you could do better, but I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm pretty proud of the things that my wife and I have accomplished. It's through sacrifice. It's through giving up those little things and those little moments of, oh, well, I deserve this and I deserve this because the reason I deserve this is because of X, Y, and Z. Well, here's the problem. Your deserve this moments, that was sort of paid for. Those moments that you would have now, that was sort of paid for by that car you bought or the stuff you put on your credit card or the student loans you have. You sort of signed a check that your income can't cash right now. So you're trying to say, well, I deserve to live this life a specific way. I deserve to have X, Y, and Z. These things, I deserve them because I work hard. And you do work hard, and that's great. But you don't deserve them because you have already signed yourself up to pay this stuff off. And at this point, you have to pay it off. So just taking, for example, if you had $10,000 on a car loan, you have $10,000 on a credit card loan, and you're making these payments of, maybe you have $20,000 on a car loan, whatever it is, and student loans and all this stuff, and you have $50,000 of debt, and each month you're making like a $2,000 worth of payments. I mean, imagine if you could just pay all of that off, and then you have $2,000 extra bucks a month. What would you do with $2,000 extra bucks a month? How many more vacations could you go on where you could actually enjoy? You don't have to worry about how much money you're spending and how much does that cost here, how much does that cost there. You could actually enjoy the things that you're doing, and all it takes is 2-3 years of just real true sacrifice, of just really grinding, sacrificing, living cheap, not eating expensive food, not going out to eat, not buying an expensive phone or expensive this or expensive toy, expensive gizmo, not going to concerts, not doing anything like that. All it takes is just a little bit of sacrifice on your end for just a year or two, and doing the math and showing that, okay, if I do the sacrifice for this many months, by the end of it, I'll be done. And that's just 2.5 years. Think about 2.5 years ago. You remember 2.5 years ago. That's nothing. And I think people are unwilling to do that. And that's why so many people are suffering the weight of credit card debt and the weight of all these loans because they're unwilling to sacrifice. Obviously, there are a lot of people who maybe can't afford to do it right now, but you just have to sacrifice, work a second job, do something hard. Like my wife and I, when we were grinding, we would get off our job, we would get off work, and then we would deliver food on one of the food delivery, like Uber Eats or something like that. And then we had obviously my YouTube channel. I made some money from that just helped. And we didn't live a lavish life. We lived in a really cheap home. We had a really cheap home payment. We did everything right. We made every right decision. And, the funny thing is if you make every right decision for long enough, the results actually begin to compound themselves and can be quite remarkable. Next, I want to talk about how space travel is incredible and how we should be impressed by it. So this crazy thing is happening with these astronauts who went up to the International Space Station, and the Boeing Starliner was unable to basically bring them back home. So they're stuck in the International Space Station for 8 or 9 months, I think. It's remarkable. It's crazy. I mean, just thinking they won't be home until February when SpaceX's Crew 9 vehicle will be able to bring them back home. Nuts. I mean, can you imagine being stuck in space on the International Space Station for 9 months, 8 months, all like just with this, not a stranger, but somebody you don't know that well, your family, your friends. You're going to miss Thanksgiving. You're going to miss Christmas. You're almost going to miss the Super Bowl depending on what day they come back. I mean, the Super Bowl, that'd be terrible. Anyways, so it's just a really remarkable thing that that these astronauts have to go through. But it just makes me think about just how remarkable space travel even is. I mean, the fact that these people are stuck in space and they're not going to die and they're going to be home in February, it's just remarkable. And, I hear so many people saying that, like, oh, we're traveling to space, but we haven't fixed our own home yet. Like, we'll never fix Earth. We'll never fix the things of Earth. But it's like taking the leap of faith and pushing towards the outer limits of what we believe to be possible. That is so remarkable. Just the idea of space travel to me has always just been so incredibly impressive. The fact that you can, like, we live on this Earth, and it's just like this rock floating through space. And then we can fly up out of it and go to somewhere beyond that, somewhere that we look at the stars and we can just see it. And that's all we can see. But yet we can like we are pushing beyond what we know to be possible. I just think it's really remarkable. I think that honestly, space travel is really super duper cool. If you don't think space travel is cool, then that's fine, but you're wrong. Space travel is awesome. I would love to ride in a spaceship one day, and I hope those commercial spaceships become something that we can, when I'm old and decrepit, they'll let me fly on it one day. I just want to see the outer limits of what we're capable of. And I know that real space travel, we're probably, I mean, how long till we get to Mars? Actually, probably 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. I mean, could be thousands of years. But just the fact that like we are pushing beyond where we currently live and beyond what we currently know, it's just really cool. I mean, honestly, that's all I have to say is that space travel is really cool. And we should pray for those astronauts that are stuck in the International Space Station. I wish them well. I wish them good luck. I hope that they can keep sound body, stay healthy, and they return home safe. And the whole thing is just really remarkable. And finally, I want to talk about Apple is releasing new phones at a keynote event on September 9th. And they're supposed to have a big AI focus. Who cares? I mean, are we still impressed? Look, I'm a guy who's got a tech channel. Are we still impressed with a new iPhone? It's so boring now. Everything's so boring. I remember when I was younger, 5-6 years ago and before, I used to watch the keynotes because it was everything that was coming out was groundbreaking, and it was so remarkable. You think about the change since the iPhone 10 was released back in 2017. You think about the change of the phones from then to now. All they've done is basically just like taking that notch and made it a little bit smaller, and they call it the dynamic island, and that's it. Don't buy a new phone. New phones are so stupid. I've talked about this ad nauseum, but basically the cost of a new phone, people will do these monthly payments on a phone. And if you like do it for long enough, the amount of money you invest is something like $72 a month for the new phone. And if you invest that in the S&P 500, which returns an average of 10% since its inception back in the 1920s or whatever, so you have 100 years basically of proof that you'll return 10% if you keep it in long enough. The new phones cost like $72 a month if you're just to do the payment plan. You do the iPhone upgrade program is what it's for. And if you just invest the $72 every single month for like 40 or 50 years, you end up being a millionaire at 10% growth, which is just remarkable. Just a friendly reminder that the new gizmo, the new gadget is not going to change your life at all. There are very few things in this world that will change your life, and a new tech product is certainly not one of them. Nobody's ever gotten the new phone and be like, oh, this is what made me lose weight. This is what changed my life. No, it's only ever sucked people in more and more and more. Don't get the new phone. It might be cool. It might actually be kind of interesting what they're releasing with the new AI focus. I mean, who knows? But it's just like, who cares? Don't buy it. Don't get it. Please don't get it. You're just wasting money. And time is money. So you're wasting time, but really just wasting cash, and just don't buy it. All right. So next is the quote of the day. And this quote, I couldn't actually find who it's attributed to. I found it attributed to two things that I thought one of them was really funny. The first thing was just that it's a Jewish proverb, and the second one was Atlas saying it to his son Zeus. But I believe it's the Jewish proverb is sort of what I think is the truth, but I couldn't exactly find somebody that we could all agree on. No guarantee this is what's from. And the quote goes, "Ask not for a lighter burden, but for broader shoulders." And it's funny because I actually talked about this last week, so that's just how I'm just so intelligent, is that I can literally see the future in a way from last week to predict this week's quote of the day. The idea of asking not for a lighter burden, but for broader shoulders. You pray to God, not for remove this thing that's from me. It's give me the strength to fight this. Help me fight this. And again, I mentioned this last week, but God would never give you a burden that you cannot carry. I believe it's 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. So obviously, this is a good quote for modern times, because I think so many people, they just want somebody else to take care of it for them. A lot of people, they want the government to take care of it for them, or they want their neighbor to take care of it for them, or they just want somebody else to do it for them. But the truth is that your life, the successes and failures of your life are sort of solely on you. Some bad things can happen to you, and they do happen to you. And then, that can suck. Like, having bad things happen to you can actually suck. It can be a real Debbie Downer in a way. But your response to it is remarkable. Is if you say, this is a heavy burden that you have given me, God. Please give me broader shoulders. Give me the strength to carry this. That's all I need. I can carry this burden, but I need your help. As opposed to saying, take away this burden. It's too much. I can't handle it. It's too much for me. Like I don't want to step up to the task, the difficulties of this. No, that is a perfect way to be miserable, because the successes of your life, the way your life turns out is on you. There are a lot of things where, yeah, there are some things out of your control. That's true. But the way you wake up every morning, do you smile? Do you frown? Do you complain? Do you say, you know what? Some things haven't gone my way recently, but I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to broaden my shoulders. I'm going to lift the weight, and I'm going to bear the burden. And I'm not going to ask for a lighter burden. I might even ask for a heavier burden, because I know I can take it. I know I can carry it, because I have, obviously you have God behind you, and also that you know that you can do it through him. And so that's like, this quote to me is, it's just very appropriate for modern times and everything with all the politics going on in America. Everybody, it's just about, how can the government solve my problems? Oh, can the Republicans solve my problems, or can the Democrats solve my problems? Who's going to solve my problems the best? Your burden, your life is on your hands, and it's up to you to decide how you respond. And I believe in you, and I believe that you can respond in a more positive way, and that you can bear a much greater weight, because it's not me. I mean, I don't know you. Again, like, it's not, I am rooting for you. I am, but I don't know you personally. But there is a power much greater than I who does know you, and who knows that what I'm saying about you is true. And because he's the one that said it. So thank you. I guess he didn't say it to me directly, but through these scriptures, it is clearly written that being made in God's image, he has a plan for you. And that's much greater than what you can achieve, because you're going to be steeped in sin your entire life. But the further away from sin you go, and the closer to God and to Jesus that you become, obviously the broader your shoulders will be. All right, next is the comment section. There are no comments, although my friend Tom, I have like two people comment, or three people. It's like my wife, there's Kenji, and then there's my friend Tom. And I would guess I consider Kenji a friend. So I have two friends and my wife who comments. You know, we'll get there. Somebody else will comment. He did say that he really enjoyed the podcast, and that I'm always asking for somebody to tell me something that he disagrees with so I can respond to it in comments. He goes, I honestly just like the podcast. So thank you, Tom. I obviously am genuinely appreciative of the kind words. And also I should say, if you do enjoy the podcast, hit follow. It was just crazy. I always give these little updates, or I've been giving these updates every week. And I have 7 followers on Apple now and 5 on Spotify, which is crazy. Just randomly, I have 12 followers. That's awesome. If you like this podcast, please give it a 5-star review, so that way more people can listen to it, and follow it. That way it just gets bumped up into the Apple and Spotify charts. I don't exactly know how it works, but I know that if you do those things, it'll help. Or if you disagree with me and you want to give it a 1-star, that's fine too, but just understand that you're wrong. All right, and finally, the final section of the day, the unsolicited advice section. In today's unsolicited advice, I was thinking about what I wanted to say. I had a few ideas, but I'm like, man, they're all so like ethereal, and I want to give something more like on a daily basis. You can just do this one thing. I want to give advice that if you just follow this one thing, or you can do this one tangible thing, that's what I want people to do. And instead of like, oh, we'll carry a heavier load, like, okay, yeah, that's a good sentiment, obviously, but what's something that you can actually do to do that, or something like that? So my unsolicited advice is to take cold showers. And this is going to sound a little strange. Cold showers, I think, have been one of the most positive things that I do in my life. When I'm doing the least in my life, I start to take warm showers. It's really remarkable. My wife even notices it too. She goes, just recently, maybe 5-6 months ago, she goes, you should start taking cold showers again, because you're different when you take warm showers. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. The first one is that a warm shower is just comfort. It's just comfort. It's just the most comfortable thing. And when you're living life, it's so easy to get comfortable, especially in modern times. You got a decent job, you're making decent money, you got everything sort of just going pretty decent for you. But like, you're not pushing beyond where your limits currently are. Like we talked about with space travel, that's why it's so impressive, is because we're traveling beyond what our current limits are. And so a warm shower is just that, is you are just you're staying on Earth. You're not pushing beyond to the stars. You're just sort of staying low key, and you're just sort of keeping it warm. And you take a 30-minute shower and you feel good. You feel good after it. But then, to me, honestly, my skin always itched after I took a warm shower. Every single time I was always uncomfortable, and I always regretted taking a warm shower after I took the warm shower, even though in the moment it felt good, which is it's interesting. That's like an analogy for sin, is when you're sinning, it feels good in the moment. And then you take a step back and you go, whoa, I shouldn't have done that. That was terrible. That's a gross feeling. I know that's wrong. I knew that was wrong. Why did I do that? That was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. It's interesting. I didn't even think about that before. I have a few notes here. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, the warm shower to me is really analogous to sin, whereas a cold shower isn't. There are some technical benefits you can see from it. It might help increase testosterone, and it might help speed up the metabolism. I never felt anything like that. Obviously, I am just a testosterone rocket. You know me, I got 2 kids. I'm going to have like 12 kids. It's just I'm bald. So all the testosterone, some people waste their testosterone on their hair. Me, I had so much testosterone that it went to other parts of my body. No, but in all seriousness, I don't actually know if there's any truth behind that. I think what I've seen is it's very minor, like 0.01% to 0.1%. So it might technically happen, but increasing your metabolism even 1%, 2,000 calories, that'd be like 20 extra calories in a day. So it's pretty much negligible. But the things that it will actually do, there actually are some tangible things that it will do. And you realize that most leaps of faith aren't actually that scary. So when you taking a cold shower, it's really weird. Even still, what I do now, what I've been doing recently is I just get in the shower and then I turn the water on, because it's like you're just gonna get hit by it. That's what you're gonna feel, because a lot of times you just like you still flinch. You're afraid. I think I've heard somebody call it the flinch, and I think somebody wrote a book about it. But basically, it's like this idea of the flinch of you don't want to take that leap, and until you take that leap, you don't know that the leap wasn't that scary. And in this case, it's just cold water. And also like learning to trust the process of, okay, you take a cold shower. The first part of it is the hardest. The first 10 seconds is the hardest, but then the next 10 seconds get easier, and the next 10 seconds get easier, and then a minute goes by, and then 2 minutes go by, and you've actually begun to adapt, and you begin to get better at being in this cold shower. It's still cold. It's still uncomfortable. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, and after 10 minutes of it, it'll feel like a warm shower. No, it'll pretty much always feel cold because it's a cold shower. I mean, the temperature of the water that I get is like 50 degrees, I think, maybe 48 or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. 32 Fahrenheit is 0 Celsius. So it's probably like, I don't know, 10-ish Celsius. We'll just do some rough math and say it's about that for the people who are not Americans. And so then, like, as you do take a shower, it's very similar to just starting something new. You start out as a beginner, and the hardest thing to do is just to start, to actually get in the water. And it's hard, but it gets easier and easier and easier, and you begin to adapt, and you begin to sort of feel and understand what's going on. Okay, yeah, this is cold, but like, I'm okay, I'm living, my body's starting to adapt to it. It's uncomfortable, but I'm learning, and I'm getting better at being in this water. It's very similar to anything. When I first started making YouTube videos for the first time, I was a beginner. I had no idea what I was doing. Had I never started, though, which was the hardest part, starting was the hardest part for me. Had I never started, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I'm very good at making videos. I'm very excellent at it. And the only reason is because I jumped. And one moment I stepped into that shower, I turned on the water, and I dealt with the coldness. And you have to trust the process and understand that, like, you will begin to adapt, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And you realize that at the end of the day, the scariest part was going from out of the shower, out of your clothes, to in the shower. And that was the hardest part. Once you get into the shower, you start to adapt. And comparing this to life and with anything, you start to learn, you start to problem solve, and this will extend into anything within your life at all, anything new that you try or any new challenge you face. The hardest part is just starting. And once you get into it, it's just problem solving. It's just figuring out this next problem, getting better at this. How come this problem came up? Oh, well, I need to be better at this certain skill. And once I get better at that skill, I'll be able to handle these types of problems a lot more easily next time. And that's what taking a cold shower can do for you. It also just a lot quicker. Like my warm showers would take me like 20, 30 minutes, and I would get out and the whole bathroom would be all steamed up and everything. It would just be like really annoying. And then my back would be really itchy because I think I took too hot of a shower. But a cold shower, literally, it just takes like 2 or 3 minutes. You're in and you're out because like you don't want to be in it for too long. So this is that too. But really, I think when I'm doing the best in life, I'm taking cold showers because I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to jump. I'm willing to take that leap of faith. And I think that if you want to improve your life in a very measured way, to start, just take cold showers. You will be floored with the things that you start to do just on a daily basis. Once you take that first sleep in the shower every single morning, you choose to do the hard thing. You will really surprise yourself with the things that you're willing to take on later in the day, whether it's eating healthier or going for a workout or doing something new that you want to do that you haven't done. But once you take that cold shower, your life will begin to change almost immediately. And it's remarkable. And it's because you realize that most of the leaps of faith just aren't that scary. Thank you for listening. This has been Scott with the 18th episode of the Dear Young Men podcast. Again, if you liked it, hit subscribe, hit like, hit follow. Check out the YouTube channel. I got to post. I have a new clips channel I'm coming out with. Subscribe to that. Whatever you got to do. Rate it a 5-star. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. I will see you back here next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's all I got. Peace.